Hello and welcome to the Q&A session with Jeremy Dalton. Virtual reality is far from that. I'm trying now to connect with the speaker and bring him on board. So please give me some seconds. Hello and good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning to you too. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Great. And thanks a lot again for your amazing keynote. We loved it. And here we are in the Q&A session. So so this is how it works. Basically, I will ask people to join or basically throw their question through the chat. And also, we can invite them on stage if you like the idea, so they can raise their hand and we can invite on stage and have a conversation. We have now 11 people. And so if you missed the Jeremy presentation, so Jeremy is the author of Reality Check, How Immersive Technology Can Transform Your Business. Is a book that you absolutely have in a library. It's a very great book. And also personally say, I think it's a very great, how can I call it, guide for business people in order to approach the VR market. Also, Jeremy leads the PVC XR team, helping clients across all industries successfully implement this technology, and also sit on advisory board on Immerse UK to support business interested in immersive technologies. So, if you are agree, Jeremy, I suggest to, okay, we have now 15 people. I hope they are not too shy. So, I see William in our audience. So, if you would like to ask some question, please raise your hand. You will find raise your hand below our pictures, and we will invite you on stage, or you can simply throw your question in the chat as you prefer. In the meantime, I'm finished my Italian coffee.
Yeah, more than happy to chat with anyone about anything to do with XR or outside XR if you're interested. So I've been involved in lots of different projects, from using virtual reality for soft skills, using it in cybersecurity, crisis simulations, using it for commercial acumen training, diversity and inclusion training. I have obviously written Reality Check. That was to try and jog the views of business leaders around the world in different industries and try and help them understand that although the technology can be used for gaming and for entertainment, and that's great, that's the consumer market, and I expect there to be great things there, it also has incredibly strong applications, and potentially actually arguably stronger applications in business. So, I talked a little bit about it in the keynote, but you can use this technology for so many different things, and it's only getting better and better every day. So I'm particularly excited about it. I see we have the first question.
Yes, and yes, it's about the movie Ready Player One. What do you think about it, and how about the time in 2035?
Yeah, sure. So thanks a lot for that, Jose. The funny thing about Ready Player One is funny story, I booked out one of the cinemas here in London to the premiere of Ready Player One here in London, and we used it as a launch event for a report that we had released at the time around the business and legal ramifications of XR technology. So if anyone's actually curious about this is the report. I'll post it in the chat window if you want to check it out. But yeah, I have a good memory with Ready Player One because we packed out the cinema with clients, with people in our teams. So we had it must have been 150 people or something like that. The whole cinema, every seat was taken, and there were people standing in the aisles as well. I enjoyed the movie. It was fun. It didn't do much though to dispel the myth of virtual reality being only a fun technology. So there wasn't much in Ready Player One about the business applications, about remote collaboration, about remote assistance, learning and development. And I can kind of understand why. This stuff is pretty boring to put on film most of the time, and that's probably why we have this view that VR and even AR is just a fun thing, because that's the most newsworthy item that gets put in the media. As for the timing, so 2045, it sounds very far off, but I have to admit it's not incredibly inaccurate if you think about how deeply embedded the technology is. Now, Ready Player One has a very dystopian view of the world, and I don't quite agree that it's going to go in that direction. But in terms of the mainstream adoption of the technology, I think 2045 is certainly a long way off. We're talking about 24 years now. I think we'll get there before that. But for those people thinking we will get to this place where every single person has a headset, or let's say everyone has a headset to the extent that everyone has a mobile phone, that is quite a long way off. We're not talking about the next few years or anything like that. So this is going to be a long burn. Let's not be unrealistic about it.
I totally agree, and I was laughing before because Ready Player One was for me a kind of that's very nice showcase of the next fortnight instead of the next business application. I totally agree, and we already see some company that are trying to, let's say, change the way we look at even microtransaction or the way we consume, let's say, content online.
Yeah.
The second question is how we can help education leaders understand the growing XR skills and competencies students need as they start work, and where should they start?
So I think thanks a lot for that, Ian, and good to see you in this session. It all stems from getting those education leaders to understand the value of the technology. So if they understand the value, then they will be more predisposed to engaging, investing, and spending time and money on the technology and pushing it to their students. So I think it starts with that, and really to get them engaged and interested and becoming a believer in the technology, you really have to get them to try it firsthand, because we've noticed this in the business world, and this encompasses education as well as many other industries, including oil and gas, banking, and so on. Because virtual reality and augmented reality are they're very front-end technologies, they're very visual, visceral technologies. They need to be experienced to be understood properly. And if they are not, and you can certainly get halfway there with presentation, slide deck, statistics, data. This all helps actually, and I think the message there though is that maybe that's a kickoff point, but then the next step really has to be to get them into a headset or whatever technology you're using to drive an interest in the technology and build that adoption. In terms of the competencies students need as they start work and where they should start, once you've got those education leaders bought in, you'll need to prove to them the connection between students going into the workplace and the demand from the workplace. So this is a bit of a supply-demand balance here. You've got students who are the supply of skills in the XR world, and you've got businesses who are demanding those skills. The business case you'll need to make is the demand for those skills, which will drive the investment in the supply, the students. So there are a number of ways you could go about this, but take a look at some of the companies that are adopting the technology, understand the job market. There's actually quite a few good statistics out there around XR job roles. I know there's been a lot of statistics about how many employees Facebook, Apple, and even smaller companies that are lesser known have when it comes to XR. I'll give you an example off the top of my head. The International Committee of the Red Cross has 12 full-time virtual reality employees. And they help to build VR scenarios for their groups around the world. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful.
Okay, so it seems like now people are getting warmer and the question of floating. So there's a kind of, it's more like a joint venture request here from Vic and Tamar. I hope you already read it. I mean, hopefully you can connect with us. I'm sure you can connect with Jeremy. You will find all the details about Jeremy and the LinkedIn account on the event page. So very happy.
You can catch me on jeremydaltonxr.com. So I put the website in the chat window there if you want to get in touch. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter mostly.
Super. Next one is again Jose. It says back to 2045 is about the singularity according to Kurzweil. What do you think? Do you think that technological singularity might happen by then?
When it comes to futurist thinking, to be honest, it's not my forte, but and I'm very much grounded in the present. And the reason and that's a deliberate action. I'm not so interested in the long-term future as I am in the current to midterm present. And the reason for that is speaking to business leaders, they don't have a lot of appetite for viewing, for long-term strategies. So all of my thinking, all of my slide decks, material, knowledge is very much based in the present. And the reason for that is business leaders want results now. Reality check was very much grounded in the present time. And I wanted to try and use that to tell the story that this technology is not a future technology. It is a here and now technology, and it drives business results now across different industries. So that was really my aim there. If you wanted me to sort of take a punt at the question in terms of the year 2045, I think it's so far off, to be honest, that it makes it very difficult to predict anything. We're getting short-term predictions, or let's say medium-term predictions in the next 5 to 10 years wrong. So I'm very doubtful about our ability to predict anything beyond a decade, and potentially even less than that, to be honest. So I'm a cynic when it comes to very long-term futurist views, let's say.
Thank you. I will not reply because I represent this also singularity, so I can't say anything. But there's also another project called 2035. I'm sure you know that. So, and one of the guys will be there tomorrow. What do you think are the main mistakes to avoid? The right guideline in business for the future to avoid the expectation of being so different from actual adoption. As an example, Google Glasses, I suppose Roberto talking about version 1. We understand that one is don't expect it quickly.
I think the other one is don't assume you need the most cutting edge technology. So Google Glass is alive and well. It's just it didn't make it in the consumer world because that was the wrong application at the time for the hardware. So Google Glass is being used in businesses all over the world right now. The version 2 Enterprise Edition, and it is not the most advanced technology. It's certainly not as advanced as a lot of mixed reality head-mounted displays where the objects can actually be anchored and interact with the real world. But that doesn't matter because even though it's just providing a digital layer on top of your real world view, that is valuable in the business world. Being able to quickly refer to a document, being able to receive remote assistance and have that individual look at exactly what you're looking at and highlight in your world what you need to do next and the steps you need to take. That creates efficiencies, that saves time, that reduces errors. And from a cost investment perspective, it is very clear from multiple applications of that technology around the world that there is significant return on investment. So another lesson is, in summary, don't assume you need the most cutting edge technology. In terms of, I think you mentioned a part of your question here, avoiding expectations so different from actual adoption. What I would say to that as well, you've got to be careful with how you market some of this hardware, particularly if it's to a consumer market. So if you're selling hardware to a consumer market, you need to be very clear and upfront about what the value is there, and also where your views are with the technology and where it's going. I think a lot of people who invested in Google Glass and similar technology at the time had this view that this was going to be a thing that would be maintained for many years to come. And when that expectation wasn't met, then there were obvious problems. The other issue I would say is we've experienced concerns when it comes to battery life. We've experienced concerns when it comes to privacy and data protection. And I think the lesson there is you have to be upfront about the limitations of the technology, even if it's a little bit difficult to communicate because it goes against your company, your business, your product. And the reason being, if you are upfront, you build that level of trust by raising the challenges. Of course, what you can do on the other side of that is you can say, look, these are the challenges, but this is how we're mitigating them as well. In terms of privacy, yes, the camera can technically take a picture or take video of confidential information and people, but at the same time, it has a safeguard where it shows you when it's recording, for example. It has a red light on it. Maybe the camera function is disabled only for use within a certain application, which is a pure business application. There are many different ways you can go about it, of course, and through brainstorming you'll come up with many other safeguards. But that is the point there. Bring the good, but also the bad as well, and present a balanced picture.
And by the way, let me add that in the next session we will have Frank Escadel, that is the evangelist for the Google Glasses version 2, by the way. So it will be a very interesting conversation, Roberto. If you would like to know more, I'm sure you can ping him and discuss with him why the perception is that basically the first version was a kind of failure in terms of market adoption. So next one. Will VR have a great potential than AI? And are we at the stage of VR when AI was in the 80s, where the potential was there, but the technology was lacking?
Thank you very much for that, Cora. My view on this is I don't like to compare emerging technologies because it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. They're different products, they're different, or let's say they're different solutions to different problems. Artificial intelligence is very much a back-end technology. And it does a lot of things in the background. There are algorithms that can create efficiencies, that can understand information, sift through it, filter it, and give it to us in a way that allows us to make sense of it. Virtual reality, on the other hand, is more front-end facing, as I was mentioning before. It's about the visualization of this information, the communication of it in an effective way, in an efficient way, in a convenient way. And I think that's the beauty actually of these technologies. They're not fighting each other. They are building upon each other. They form a workflow, let's say, where artificial intelligence, for example, sifts through the information. Virtual reality or augmented reality then communicates that information effectively. And when you start to think of these emerging technologies less as individual technologies with their own streams and more as technologies that could converge together, that's when you get the most potential. So I would move away thinking in terms of VR versus AI and think about it in terms of VR and AI and what you can get from bringing those two technologies together. In terms of your sentiment about the stage of VR that AI was at in the 80s, I think if you look, I don't think I didn't include this in my presentation. I was debating it, but I'll mention it here. Virtual reality as a concept has been around for a very, very long time. If you think about it, forget about headsets, forget about projection technology, projecting on all the walls of the room and all that to make you think like you're in a factory floor or something. The idea of virtual reality is to immerse you in a different world, right? However you do this is kind of like a secondary thing. You can do it with headsets, you can do it with projectors, you can do it with caves, you can do it with large screens, whatever. But the point, if I'm trying to immerse someone in a different world, we've been doing that for ages. And, I won't go all the way back to the beginning of time with, storytelling and communicating with individuals, but let's go to the 1800s, for example, in the Victorian era. In the Victorian era, they had a device that looks very much like a Google Cardboard or like a virtual reality headset. It's called a stereoscope. And believe it or not, the idea behind it, that you have two lenses that are giving you a different picture each to each eye and making you feel, therefore, like you're in that world what the pictures are representing. That concept is the same concept that we're using nowadays, right now in 2021, with cutting edge head-mounted displays. So virtual reality as a concept is very old, but where we're getting to now is a place where it can be scaled massively, and the applications are becoming more viable because of the increase in processing power available, and therefore the better ability and greater interactivity available to immerse us in these other worlds. So it's a very exciting time for sure.
Thank you. I was thinking of when you talk exactly about the same thing, and also in general, the big advent of role-playing games and other kind of gaming where you have to think about different realities. So yeah, that's a perfect example.
You accept in those situations you were using your head instead of a head-mounted display, right?
Exactly. So the next question is from Manuel. Hello, Manuel. Nice to see you. How do you feel about Professor Spicer's view on how the media has shifted us from our natural connection and in time of global environment issue to education model to get kids outside and connect with nature? And a small addition later says, and balance integration of tech and nature challenges.
Sure. No, it's a good question you raise, Manuel. And to be honest with you, I'm not aware of Professor Spitzer's view on this, but I think you summarized it there for me. And if I take what you said there, I think there is a concern, and it's a valid concern, that virtual reality will take us out of nature, because by definition, it's a virtual reality. It's not a natural reality. It's not, that concept though is not specific to virtual reality. That is specific to any form of technology, or in fact, not even necessarily technology in a digital form, but anything that keeps us indoors as an activity. And that hasn't damaged humankind to date. I would argue maybe people might think it has, given the current affairs of the world. But in fact, if you look at some of the analysis on the current state of humanity, there are obviously many different factors to look at here, and you may have different priorities on which ones are most important. But through many of them, objectively, we are in a better place in the world than we've ever been before. So I don't think we have suffered as a result of the implementation of many of these technologies, digital and otherwise. And the reason for that is not because they weren't capable of destroying humanity or damaging it significantly, but because we were careful with how we progressed them. We introduced safeguards. We made sure that, as parents, we made sure that our kids are not playing 12 hours a day on the computer. At least some of us. I might not explain what my childhood was like. But we also have government interventions, for example, that help to specify recommendations around the use of the technology and things like that. And those safeguards really are key. And if we take it a level up, when we're introducing virtual reality or any other technology into the world where there are possibilities for these damaging consequences, as long as we are engaging with them, understanding, being open about them, and communicating possible safeguards and solutions, then I think we will form a very beautiful balance that will allow us to live in harmony with those technologies and use them and benefit from them, but while also not losing our connection to the natural world as well.
Thank you for your reply. And so we don't have further question, but I have a question for you. And it's one of the topics we would like to cover in this event. And it's very easy to understand. I mean, we are now talking about different reality, and we will soon have to be able to manage our identity in the normal reality and identity in metaverses or virtual reality in general. So do you think as, let's say, as human that carry on a hardware that was updated last time 50,000 years ago, so our brain, how will we be able to manage different realities and the data we will receive from different realities at the same time?
I think we have to get those results from the academic world, to be honest. And there hasn't been a lot of there haven't been many yet. In fact, I can't think of one long-term study on the use of virtual reality technology and its impact on the brain. That's not to say that it's therefore dangerous. It just hasn't been explored. There is one university that I'm aware of that is currently conducting a research into this space. You know, how does virtual reality affect humans in the long term? And that is the University of Leeds in the UK. And they're running a project called Born in Bradford, if anyone wants to research it. That is not a virtual reality specific research project, but it includes an element of virtual reality in it as well. So we will likely get some interesting results from that in the next, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it ends up being, once we've gathered all of that long-term data. Personally, though, I'm positive, based on the evidence I've seen so far to date, to think that we'll hopefully not have anything that is damaging, that we cannot manage in a way that once we've better understood it, we'll be able to do.
Thank you. And we have 2 more questions, so we have still 10 minutes. It's good. In automotive, I strongly think we are far behind the adoption of available friendly information, display to driver, VR, XR included. I mean, in the opposite direction of putting edge tablets in the dashboard of the car. Do you agree?
So automotive is a really interesting one. The funny thing is, Roberto, that the automotive industry was one of the first industries to really adopt virtual reality in a significant way. If you look at companies like Ford, like Jaguar, Land Rover, they invested in virtual reality back in the early 2000s. And they still use it to date, in fact, but they don't use it on the consumer side. So in other words, that technology doesn't appear in the car that we as consumers are driving, but it is used in the behind the scenes back end manufacturing design of the vehicles itself, which you probably already know, but for everyone else's sake in the room, I'll mention it. And there are some real benefits there. And so I don't think automotive is necessarily behind when it comes to adopting the technology, but I think it seems like it's behind because the consumer facing side of things hasn't adopted it as rapidly as its back end teams. But I don't necessarily blame the automotive companies for that. There has to be demand from consumers for them to implement that technology. If there is a strong enough demand, then I can assure you, all companies, regardless of industry, are motivated by sales. There would be that technology in the vehicles. Now, the other problem, and it makes it a little bit of a challenging one, consumers or people in general don't know what they don't know, right? So they sometimes have to be led. And what I would agree with, or let's say I'm getting closer to your point here, automotive companies are not necessarily exploring innovations and driving them to the consumer as quickly as they possibly could. Now, when consumers and if consumers don't have those technologies to view, then they can't demand them. The good thing is, however, that we're starting to see that being more rapidly adopted now in vehicles Audi are looking at it, and all sorts of other companies are displaying. I think it's Volkswagen I'm thinking of, proper heads-up displays versus just tablets in the vehicles. And once more consumers get to grips with that and they start seeing the benefits of that, then and also adjacent benefits of using, like augmented reality on mobile phones or virtual reality via head-mounted displays, this will all feed into greater demand that automotive can respond to.
Thanks. By the way, mentioning automotive here in Germany, I'm sure you know that there's a company called Gosfeel that started introducing update devices in the seat of the car to guide, instead of using the navigator left, right, guide the people, giving them stimuli through haptic seats. That could be something they are starting. I don't know exactly where they are in terms of putting that in the market. I saw a lot of experiment. I saw the adoption in the car, but it's very interesting what you say in terms of how the market and also the automotive industry think about the market. That's mainly the point for me.
Yeah, there's also actually another technology. I think maybe you're alluding to this one, Fabrizio. It's a British company called Ultraleap, and they were previously Ultra Haptics before they bought Leap Motion. And they have a technology which uses ultrasound to create an in-air haptic experience. So in other words, you feel a button, an object in the air itself. So you're not actually touching anything. But because of the way the sensors work, they can push ultrasound to certain points in 3D space. So when you drive your hand across that space, you get the feeling of this object or this button or whatever it is. And that can obviously be used to communicate information and to change buttons, to change the shape and all the rest of it, to act like different things. And that's being explored in the automotive market as well. I think it will take quite a long time to reach viability if it gets there, but I think it's a really interesting area.
It's funny. Can you repeat the name? Because I didn't know the company. I was mentioning another company that using basically 24 real motors pumped with air to simulate G's accelerations.
Yeah, sure. So this company is called Ultraleap, and I'll put their URL in the chat there. So it's just ultraleap.com if you want to check it out.
Absolutely. Very curious. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries.
So next question. So in your work at PwC, can you share how the use of XR has impacted, benefit the work you do both internally with colleagues and externally with customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are many examples I can draw upon, but let me take one of them, which I think is really significant, given the fact that we're still in the brunt of the pandemic. Although hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel now. The pandemic has obviously spread people out across the globe. It's destroyed centralization or office working, which means it's very difficult to bring people together. And as good as video conferencing technology has become, it's not as effective as face-to-face interactions for doing any kind of significant workshopping, where you're trying to brainstorm with someone, where you're trying to share ideas, where you're trying to whiteboard together, things like that. But virtual reality gets us closer to face-to-face. It's not the same as face-to-face interaction, but it definitely gets us closer. And we've been using virtual reality to bring our people, as well as our clients, together from all around the world. So we've done projects in Japan, Australia, the USA, Russia, China, loads of countries where we've brought teams together in pharmaceuticals, in banking, oil and gas, to run workshops. And I'm thinking about one actually I can mention, which is an interesting one. There was a furniture company we were doing a project with, and we brought the client into the virtual space, and nobody was in the same room together, but they were all felt like they were having a shared experience because of the immersive nature of virtual reality technology. And we brought in some of the 3D models of their upcoming furniture to discuss to discuss it, because it was on the agenda in terms of, where are we going to get what's the expected revenue streams from these new bits of furniture? What is so special about them? Because they're 3D objects, we could communicate them in a much stronger way using virtual reality technology. And that's just one example of how we've used it to bring people closer together where it hasn't been possible. And that's a benefit that we will retain. And when I say we, I don't mean just PwC, but everyone in the world will retain, even when COVID-19 becomes less of an issue. And the reason for that is COVID-19 is not the reason for virtual reality's success. It's definitely an accelerator and has gotten the technology on the radar of many people. But ultimately, virtual reality does help to connect people in much stronger ways than we've been able to do previously. And those benefits will be there. Once COVID-19 subsides, we will still have difficulties meeting due to financial reasons, time reasons, health reasons, disability reasons, whatever it is. There are a whole host of reasons why we can't meet face-to-face all the time. And virtual reality will be there to pick up the pieces and really help with that as a solution.
Super. We have 2 minutes. One more question, quick.
Sure.
Okay. Linked to cars in VR, a benefit for people learning to drive and drive in circumstances like snow, fog, motorway driving when they learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to understand or think about the benefits of or let's say the limitations and attributes of virtual reality when you're thinking about an application like that. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to emulate the slipperiness of roads and the sort of traction you feel on the pedals, or how the handling of the car, how it feels in the most realistic way, without adopting other technologies like a mock-up of a vehicle, or pedals that and a steering wheel that they use in gaming sometimes. But I think in terms of visual stimuli, like reduced vision. So you mentioned the fog, for example, snow. So we could be thinking about snow blindness. All that sort of stuff, I think, could really be useful when it comes to using virtual reality for that in its most basic way. And the other stuff you can definitely emulate to some extent using the mechanics of the vehicle. But when it comes to haptics, I think it's possible, but it's a more complicated task that will require a lot more investment. Let's put it that way.
So, okay, there's a lot of other interaction in the chat. Thanks, Manuel. Thanks, anyone, for more questions as well. We are a bit, in time. If you would like to stay and talk, I'm super happy to leave you the session open, but I don't want to abuse of your time, Jeremy. You are very nice. Also, we had some trouble with video on our side, so I don't want really to take too much.
No worries, Fabrizio. I will have to run to another meeting, but I'm more than happy to keep in touch with everyone. So feel free to message me if you'd like. So if you would like to stay in touch, please reach Jeremy at his website, jeremydaltonxr.com. Stay in touch with him. And now, so I can close the session. I invite you to go to the networking. We will start the next session in 10 minutes. And have a coffee, relax, networking with people, speed networking with strangers, and have fun. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Again, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your effort, and especially the opportunity to meet you in person, meet you in person. The pleasure is all mine, and thanks to everyone in the audience for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.